This is how to play King Domino. King Domino is a fun game for 2 to 4 players, ages 8 and up, and each game runs about 15 minutes long. This game is played with rectangular tiles, or dominoes, split in half to squares, and each square has 1 crown, 2 crowns, 3 crowns, or no crowns at all. The tiles that have more crowns are more valuable in the game, and so on the backs of those tiles, the numbers are larger. The game comes with components to build little castles for each player, but the castles really play no part in the actual game, so I'd rather just play with the base of the castle for quicker setup. The goal of this game is to create a 5x5 square with your castle base in the center. You may also end with your castle base off-center, which is fine, you'll just get fewer points for it. But you can never place pieces outside of the 5x5 square, so there'll be times where you leave spaces empty due to poor planning. You get points by multiplying the number of crowns by the number of the same color squares touching. So this green section is worth 2 points right now. 1 crown times 2 green squares. However, if I add this piece, now it's worth 4 points because there's 1 crown, but 4 green squares. If I were to add this yellow piece, it would connect the 4 yellows, which is great, but there are no crowns, so it's worth 0 points right now. If I get a yellow crown later in the game, I can connect it though, to make it worth points. In this case, the yellows are now worth 5 points, because there are 5 yellow squares times 1 crown. The greens are also worth 5 points for the same reason. The points really start to multiply when you have multiple crowns touching the same color. In this case, there are 2 crowns touching 6 green squares, so it's worth 12 points. And then if I added this piece, there would be 3 crowns touching 7 green squares for 21 points. Begin by shuffling the tiles so they're randomized. Don't worry if you don't know how to do a fancy shuffle, just mix them up any way you know how. Then place 4 random tiles on the table, but arrange them in numbers highest to lowest. And then flip them over. Now each player will select which tile they want by placing their game piece on that tile. A second group of tiles are placed, and the player who chose the lowest number in round 1 gets to go first in selecting for round 2. Then they'll take their original piece from round 1 and place it against their castle base. It can go in any direction or on any side of their base, however they want to start the game. Now it's the next player's turn. They'll select their next tile and place their original tile against their base. Then the third and fourth player will do the same thing. Each new round will follow that same format until there are no tiles left. When placing additional tiles, they can always touch your base in any direction. It's like a wild card. But if they touch another tile, at least one of the 2 squares has to match the same color and touch. So this would not be okay because the green does not match the yellow. However, this would be fine. This next piece can be placed in many different positions because it touches a lot of different colors. However, I'd want to place it like this so that the yellows all touch and the greens touch as well. If I got this piece next, I'd probably place it here, which is totally fine because at least one of the 2 green squares is touching another green square. If I got this piece next, I'd be limited in where I can place it because neither of the 2 squares match the colors of any of my current tiles, so it would have to touch my base. Then I'd place this tile in the most logical place where it touches 2 of the same colors. If I got this piece next, I'd have a decision to make. I could either put it along with the yellows or along with the greens. I can't put it on the side because I'm already 5 wide in my square. You're not allowed to go past 5 spots. Since the green square has a crown on it, I'm going to put it on this side to make my green squares worth some points. I have some options for this next piece, but it has 2 crowns on a light green spot, so I want to touch it to my other light green spot. I'll place it here so that maybe I can connect the yellows later. If I got this piece next, it would allow me to connect the yellows. I don't want to place it this way. I want to flip it upside down, so now I have 6 yellow pieces and 2 crowns touching. If I got this piece next, I'd place it here to connect more yellows and get the 2 black squares to touch each other with 1 crown. If I got stuck with this piece next, I'd be in trouble. There's nowhere I can place it because my square is already 5x5, so I can't attach it to the green side, and it doesn't match any colors on the other side, so I literally just have to throw this piece away. Let's pretend that didn't happen though. Let's say I got this piece, which would be great. I'd obviously connect it to my other blue pieces. If this were the last tile I got, I would finish off my square nicely by connecting the blues and the yellows. Now my square is complete, and I'd calculate my points. Starting with black, there are 2 squares with 1 crown, so that's worth 2 points. Then I'd go to yellow. There are 8 squares with 2 crowns, so that's 8 times 2. That's worth 16 points. Then dark green. There are 6 squares with 1 crown, so that's 6 points. Then light green. There are 2 squares with 4 crowns. That's worth 8 points. And finally, the blue section has 5 squares with 2 crowns, worth 10 points. This extra yellow square doesn't have a crown on it and is not connected to the other yellow squares, so it doesn't count for any points. We'll gain an extra 10 points for having our base directly in the center of the square, and 5 more points for completing the entire square without leaving any empty spaces. So my final score for this game is 57 points. And that's how to play King Domino.